All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into ONDO Finance.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, we've got a whole pile of listener questions about it.
I bet.
Price charts and news articles, even predictions about the future.
Yeah, I can see why people are curious.
So we're going to try to make sense of it all right here, right now.
Sounds good to me.
Crypto can be confusing, especially a newer project like this.
Definitely. There's a lot to unpack.
So that's why we're here, to break it down, make it digestible.
Exactly.
So first off, did you know ONDO is trying to make Wall Street level investments available to everyone?
Yeah, that's one of the things that makes them so fascinating, right?
And what do the experts think the price of ONDO might do by, say, 2030?
Well, let's find out.
Okay, so we've got price data, news articles, even partnership announcements to go through.
All right, lay it on me.
So maybe you could start by giving us a quick definition of ONDO Finance.
Sure. So ONDO Finance is all about bridging this gap between, real-world assets.
Real-world assets.
Yeah, like things you can actually touch. Buildings, bonds, stuff like that.
Okay, I'm following.
And they're connecting that to the world of decentralized finance.
DeFi, as the cool kids call it.
Exactly. They're taking these assets, things that usually require millions to invest in, and making them accessible to everyday people.
How do they do that?
Through something called tokenization.
Ah, yes, tokenization. It's a word we hear a lot, but I think a lot of our listeners might still be fuzzy on what it actually means.
You got it. And it's connected to those real-world assets, or RWAs.
So break it down for us. What is tokenization and how does it work with these RWAs?
Okay, imagine you want to invest in a skyscraper. Big dreams, right?
I wish.
Traditionally, you'd need a massive amount of capital, but ONDO changes the game. They take that skyscraper, represent it as digital tokens, and then you can buy a fraction of those tokens. It's like owning a tiny piece of that building, and it's all powered by blockchain technology. That's tokenization in a nutshell.
So it's kind of like buying stock in a company, but instead of a company, you're buying a piece of a real-world asset.
That's a great analogy.
Okay, so I think we're starting to get a picture of what ONDO is all about. What about some of the specific products they've created around this concept?
Well, one that's been getting a lot of attention is USDY.
Right, and I know in some of these articles it's being compared to stablecoins like Tether.
Yeah, there are definitely some similarities, but some key differences too.
Like what? In a practical sense, how is USDY different from something like Tether?
Let's say we're in a bear market and, things are looking shaky. If you're holding Tether, the best case scenario is you maintain the value of your dollar. But with USDY, you're still earning a fixed yield, currently around 4.35%.
Interesting. So even if the crypto market takes a nosedive, holding USDY can still offer some protection and even generate a return.
That's the idea.
Now, I also saw another ONDO product in the research, OUSG. It seems to be tied to U.S. Treasury bills.
It is.
Is it kind of like a crypto version of a bond ETF?
Yeah, you could definitely see it that way.
And what's interesting is with the Federal Reserve talking about raising interest rates, OUSG is certainly looking pretty attractive, right?
It is, because as those interest rates go up, the yield on OUSG, which is currently 4.2%, could climb too.
So ONDO is kind of positioned to benefit from those big economic shifts.
It seems that way, at least potentially.
Potentially, yeah. Always got to be careful in crypto.
You got it. Never a sure thing.
Okay, so we've talked about tokenization, some of ONDO's products, but what about the token itself? What's ONDO been doing in the market?
Well, looking at Forbes and CoinGecko, it's had some pretty wild swings.
Crypto, right. Gotta love the volatility.
Right. ONDO is ranked hashtag 60 on CoinMarketCap and hashtag 66 on CoinGecko.
Out of how many?
Over 16,000 cryptocurrencies out there.
Wow, that's actually pretty impressive.
It is, but the price has been all over the place, from an all-time high of $2.15 down to just 8 cents at its lowest.
Yikes, that's a roller coaster. But didn't I see that it surged over 1,000% in 2024? What drove that?
They've been making some big moves in the RWA space, and that's attracted some major players.
Like who?
Well, they've got partnerships with companies like Google Cloud, Chateau Capital.
Big names.
And their recent collaboration with Plume Network has been a big deal too.
What's a network?
It's a blockchain specifically designed for RWA finance.
Oh, okay. So that makes sense.
Yeah, that partnership has definitely contributed to that surge. But we should also talk about this upcoming token unlock event.
Oh, right. That's coming up soon, isn't it?
It is, and it's a big one.
How big are we talking?
We're talking 2.57 billion tokens.
Whoa, and at current prices.
That's over $2.8 billion hitting the market.
So should people be worried?
Well, it's something to be aware of when you increase the supply of something that much.
And demand stays the same, prices go down.
Right. But it's not necessarily all doom and gloom.
How so?
Well, think about who's receiving these tokens. The developers, of course, the ecosystem itself, but also participants in the private sale.
And those are some pretty big names, right?
Yeah, we're talking Founders Fund, Coinbase, Pantera Capital.
So these big institutions, they believed in Ondo enough to get in early. Maybe they're not looking to dump their tokens right away.
Exactly. It's a risk, but it doesn't necessarily mean Ondo is doomed.
Got it. Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground here: tokenization, partnerships, this big token unlock coming up.
And we haven't even talked about their unique features yet.
Oh, right. I almost forgot. Those risk-isolated loans and the peer-to-pool interaction.
There's a lot more to unpack with Ondo.
Well, I can't wait to dive into those unique features and see how they fit into everything else we've talked about.
Let's do it. All right, so picking up where we left off, before the break, we were talking about that upcoming token unlock.
Right, and all the, potential implications of that.
Definitely something to keep in mind, but let's get into what makes Ondo unique.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned risk-isolated loans and peer-to-pool interaction.
I did.
Those sounded pretty interesting, but also kind of complex.
Yeah, maybe a bit. Let's break them down.
Okay, so starting with risk-isolated loans.
Okay, so picture this. You're a lender. You want to earn some interest.
Sure, who doesn't?
But you're also a little cautious, right? You don't want to risk it all.
Makes sense.
So with Ondo, you can lend into specific pools, like dedicated to those tokenized skyscrapers we were talking about.
Okay, so my loan is basically isolated to that specific asset.
Exactly. If something goes wrong, the impact is limited to that pool.
So it's not like traditional finance where everything's kind of interconnected.
Right. Your funds aren't exposed to broader market risks.
Interesting. So it's a way to control my risk, potentially earn higher yields depending on what I'm comfortable with.
Exactly. More control, more potential, but, always some level of risk.
Right. Okay, so that makes sense. What about that peer-to-pool interaction? I'm still a bit fuzzy on that.
Okay, so think of it this way. Instead of lending directly to another person, you're lending to a pool of assets.
Okay, so it's less about who I'm lending to and more about what I'm lending to.
Exactly. And this makes things more flexible, more scalable.
How so?
Well, borrowers get access to more liquidity from a bigger pool, and lenders can diversify their investments across different assets within that pool.
So it's kind of like a more efficient way to connect borrowers and lenders?
Exactly. And Ondo's platform is what makes it all happen.
Okay, so we've got these risk-isolated loans, peer-to-pool interaction, all built on this idea of tokenization. It really does seem like Ondo's onto something, huh?
Yeah, they're really trying to democratize institutional-grade finance.
Like we were talking about earlier, making these kinds of investments available to everyone.
Right. But, with any new innovation, there are always challenges.
Oh, absolutely. There's no such thing as a free lunch, right?
Right. And one of the biggest hurdles for DeFi is, regulation.
Ah, yes, the dreaded R word.
It's true. The crypto world is still like the Wild West in a lot of ways.
Definitely. Governments are still trying to figure out what to do with it all.
And that uncertainty can make it tough for projects like Ondo.
So how could that affect them specifically?
Well, they might have to adapt their offerings, change how they operate based on these evolving regulations.
And it's different everywhere, right?
Exactly. It could slow down their expansion, maybe even create legal problems.
So basically, keeping an eye on the regulatory landscape is key for anyone interested in Ondo.
Absolutely. But regulation isn't the only challenge.
What else is out there?
Well, competition's heating up.
Right. We were talking about new players like FX guys.
Yeah, them. And then you've got the big traditional financial institutions. They've got resources, global reach.
They're starting to wake up to the potential of blockchain and tokenization.
Right. And that creates a whole new level of competition.
But doesn't Ondo have that first mover advantage? They've been in this space longer, right?
They do, which is definitely a plus. But they can't just sit back and relax.
They got to stay ahead of the game, right?
Exactly. They need to keep innovating, find those strategic partnerships.
And prove that their platform actually works, that it offers real value.
Exactly. It's a race.
A race to stay relevant, prove their worth, and attract investors.
That's the crypto world for you.
It is. So for someone thinking about investing in Ondo, what does all this mean?
Well, it means understanding that there's risk, right? Volatility is part of the game.
Crypto's not for the faint of heart.
It's not. But for those who are willing to embrace the risk, who believe in Ondo's vision, it could be really rewarding.
So it's all about balancing that risk with a potential reward.
Right. Speaking of reward, those price predictions were pretty wild, weren't they?
Yeah, some analysts are saying 50 to 100x returns by 2030.
Big numbers. But remember, they're just predictions.
Easy to get caught up in the hype.
So important to look beyond the hype. Focus on the fundamentals. Their technology, their team, their partnerships. What's their roadmap?
Do you believe in what they're doing? Do you see the value?
Exactly. Don't just chase the what ifs. Look at the tangible stuff.
Solid advice. So, okay, we've talked about potential, risks, competition, but what would you tell somebody who's actually considering taking the plunge with ONDO?
First things first, do your own research. Don't just take our word for it.
Or even what you read in those articles.
Right. Dig into their white paper, their website, understand their tech, their team, their track record.
Basically, become an informed investor.
Exactly. Not just someone chasing the next hot thing.
What else can people do?
Engage with the community. Follow them on social media. Join the forums. Get involved.
Yeah, get a feel for the sentiment. Ask questions.
It's a great way to learn from others, get those real-time insights.
And it's not just about potential gains, right? It's about understanding the potential impact of this tech.
Absolutely. ONDO's mission is about more than just making money. They're trying to change the financial landscape, make it more inclusive.
That's a big goal.
It is. So that brings us to the big question. What does the future hold for ONDO?
$1 million question, if you ask me.
Right. We've explored the potential, the challenges, the vision, but predicting the future, it's tough.
Especially in crypto.
Yeah, things move fast, but we can look for clues, right? Analyze the trends, what's happening in the market, the technology that's driving it all.
And see where ONDO fits into all that.
Exactly. Not about predicting the future, but understanding the forces that will shape it.
Okay, so instead of a crystal ball, we need a map, a compass, something to guide us.
Exactly. And that's what we'll be doing in the last part of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's explore those potential scenarios, the roadblocks, the opportunities that are out there.
Sounds good to me.
Welcome back to our deep dive on ONDO Finance. Before the break, we were talking about the forces that could shape ONDO's future.
Right. Trying to get a sense of what's next for them, yeah.
Exactly. We know the future's always changing, especially in crypto.
It's true. Always something new popping up.
But we can still look at the trends, try to understand what might be coming.
Absolutely. Got to analyze the data, see what it tells us.
So what are some of those key factors that you think could really make a difference for ONDO in the next few years?
Well, one of the big ones has got to be overall adoption. Right?
Adoption of what specifically?
Blockchain technology, of course. But more than that, RWA tokenization.
So are we going to see this big shift where everyone's representing real-world assets on the blockchain? Is that what you're thinking?
That's the question, isn't it? Will institutions, will individuals really embrace this new way of investing?
Because if they do, ONDO's in a pretty good position, right? Being an early mover and all that.
Absolutely. They're poised for some serious growth if that adoption takes off.
But what if it doesn't? What if that adoption is like way slower than people expect?
Well, then ONDO's going to have to really focus on proving their worth, showing that their platform offers real value.
So it's not just about the tech itself. It's about showing how it can be used in the real world, the practical benefits.
Exactly. Efficiency, accessibility, returns, they've got to demonstrate that RWA tokenization makes a difference.
Okay, so adoption's a big one. What else is on your radar?
The regulatory landscape, for sure.
Yeah, can't forget about the regulators.
Governments around the world, they're all trying to figure out how to handle crypto, these tokenized assets.
It's a constantly moving target, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
Hard to predict which way things are going to go.
So how could those different regulatory scenarios impact ONDO?
Well, if we see a more favorable environment, clear regulations that support this kind of innovation.
That could be huge for them.
It could. More adoption, more institutional players coming in, it'd be a win-win.
But if things go the other way, stricter regulations.
It could limit their options. Maybe they can't operate in certain regions or the whole industry gets stifled.
So it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
Regulation is important, but too much can be a bad thing.
Absolutely. Got to find that sweet spot where innovation can flourish, but consumers are still protected.
Right. Okay, so we've got adoption, regulation, what else?
Competition. Can't forget about the competition.
True. We've already talked about new players like FX guys.
And the big traditional financial institutions, they're not going to just sit on the sidelines forever.
They're starting to see the potential of this technology.
They are, and they've got deep pockets, global reach.
So how does ONDO compete with that? How do they stand out?
Innovation, for one. They got to keep pushing the boundaries, exploring new asset classes, creating new products, staying ahead of the curve.
So basically, never stop innovating, always be one step ahead.
That's the idea. And strategic partnerships, can't underestimate those.
Right, like they did with Plume Network.
Exactly. Working with other key players, expanding their reach, tapping into new markets.
Partnerships can really amplify what you're doing.
They can. And then there's the community. Building a strong community around Ondo, that's vital.
Getting people involved, creating that sense of shared purpose.
Exactly. It's not just about a platform or a token, it's about a movement, a belief in what they're doing.
Right, building something bigger than just themselves.
And if Ondo can do all that, who knows what the future holds. Exciting times, for sure.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground here. The potential, the challenges, the vision. It's a lot to take in.
It is, but hopefully our listeners are feeling a bit more informed about Ondo Finance.
And RWA tokenization in general.
Absolutely. This is just the tip of the iceberg, really.
So much more to explore. So much still unfolding.
It's true. And who knows, maybe we'll revisit this topic down the road, see where things stand then.
I'd love that. But for now, we've reached the end of our deep dive on Ondo Finance.
Hope you enjoyed the journey.
It's been fascinating, that's for sure. And I think this is just the beginning for Ondo. We'll be watching closely to see what they do next.
Me too. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Well, until then, happy exploring, everyone. Keep diving deep into the world of knowledge.